Welcome to our channel. Mara Chen greeted the camera, her voice steady despite the nervous energy in the van. Today, we're taking you back to Ravenswood, a place that has haunted our investigations for far too long. The old Chevy van rumbled down the winding, overgrown road, its engine straining under the weight of its occupants and their equipment. Mara gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white as she navigated the cracked pavement. From the passenger seat, Derek Walsh gave a nod to the camera. "Hey everyone. Can't believe we're back in this godforsaken place," he muttered, his fingers drumming nervously against the door handle. Mara spared him a brief glance, her expression unreadable. "You know we need to finish what we started, Derek. Our viewers deserve closure." In the back of the van, Olivia Stark adjusted her headphones, her brow furrowed in concentration as she checked the sound equipment. "Mara's right. We can't leave Ravenswood unfinished." The once thriving town of Ravenswood had become a ghost of its former self, its buildings crumbling and its streets overgrown with weeds. An eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by the occasional creak of weathered wood or the rustling of leaves. As the van approached the town's dilapidated welcome sign, Mara felt a familiar sense of unease settle in the pit of her stomach. She had been to Ravenswood before, but the weight of the town's history still bore down on her, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. "We're here, guys," Mara announced, bringing the van to a stop in the town square. "Let's get set up and start filming. The sooner we can wrap this up, the better." The crew began unloading their equipment, each member focused on their task. As they prepared to shoot the first scene, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. "All right, team," she said, her voice firm. "Let's get to work." Pulling into the town square, Mara brought the van to a stop, her gaze sweeping over the abandoned storefronts and the once vibrant fountain that now stood dry and neglected. "All right, team. Let's get set up and start filming. The sooner we can wrap this up, the better." As the crew began unloading their equipment, a lone figure emerged from the shadows, approaching them with a cautious gait. Mara recognized the man immediately: James Holloway, the town's local historian and self-proclaimed expert on Ravenswood's past. "Welcome back, Ms. Chen," Holloway said, his voice tinged with a hint of apprehension. "I must say, I'm surprised to see you all return to this place." Mara offered him a curt nod. "Mr. Holloway, we're here to finish what we started. I trust you'll be able to provide us with the information we need?" Holloway's lips twitched into a faint smile, his eyes seeming to bore into Mara's very soul. Of course. I'll be happy to assist you in any way I can. However, I must warn you, Ravenswood is not the same as it was when you left." Derek, who had been busy setting up the camera, paused and turned to Holloway. "What do you mean by that?" Holloway's expression darkened, his gaze shifting from one crew member to the next. "Let's just say the town has a way of changing those who dare to venture within its boundaries. I hope you're all prepared for what lies ahead." Mara felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to let Holloway's cryptic warnings get to her. "We're professionals, Mr. Holloway. We know what we're doing. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have work to do." With a nod, Holloway stepped back, watching as the crew continued their preparations. Mara caught a glimpse of something in his eyes, a glimmer of excitement, perhaps, or something more sinister. Shaking off the unease, she turned her attention to the task at hand, determined to uncover the truth about Ravenswood once and for all. As the crew began filming their opening sequence, Mara felt a palpable sense of tension in the air. The town seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating their arrival. Derek, in particular, appeared on edge, his eyes constantly scanning the abandoned buildings and overgrown alleys for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the square, causing the crew to jump in surprise. Mara whirled around, her heart pounding, to find one of the production assistants standing amidst a pile of shattered equipment. "What happened?" Mara demanded, her voice sharp with concern. The assistant looked shaken, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know. I was just adjusting the lighting and the whole thing just fell apart. It's like the equipment has a mind of its own. Mara's brow furrowed as she surveyed the damage. That's impossible. These cameras and lights are top of the line. They don't just malfunction like that. Derek approached the scene, his expression troubled. Mara, I think we need to take a closer look at what's going on here. This isn't normal. Olivia, ever the voice of reason, stepped forward. Let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe it was just a freak accident. We'll get it cleaned up and keep going. Mara nodded, but the unease in her gut refused to subside. As the crew worked to restore order, she couldn't help but feel that they were being watched, the unseen eyes of Ravenswood bearing down on them. The remainder of the day passed in a haze of frustration and uncertainty. The crew struggled with equipment malfunctions, strange noises, and unexplained phenomena that defied all logical explanation. Mara found herself growing increasingly agitated, her rational mind at odds with the mounting evidence of the supernatural. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town square, Mara called a halt to the day's filming. All right, everyone. Let's call it a day. We'll regroup tomorrow and try to figure out what's going on. The crew, weary and on edge, began packing up their gear. Mara turned to Holloway, who had remained a silent observer throughout the ordeal. Mr. Holloway, a word, if you please? Holloway approached her, his expression unreadable. Yes, Ms. Chun? Mara fixed him with a piercing gaze. I need you to be completely honest with me. What's going on in this town? Why are we experiencing all these anomalies? Holloway's lips curled into a faint smile. Ah, Ms. Chin, always the skeptic. I'm afraid the truth about Ravenswood is far more complex than you could ever imagine. But I can assure you, the answers you seek are here, if you're willing to look. With that, Holloway turned and disappeared into the growing darkness, leaving Mara to ponder his cryptic words. As she watched him go, a sense of unease settled over her, the feeling that they had stepped into a world far beyond their understanding. The night fell over Ravenswood, and Mara couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that the town was just beginning to reveal its true nature. The morning sun struggled to pierce through the thick layer of clouds that blanketed the sky over Ravenswood, casting the town in a perpetual state of gloom. Mara Chin stared out the window of their cramped motel room, her brow furrowed in thought as she sipped her lukewarm coffee. Still no luck getting in touch with the mayor's office? Olivia asked, her eyes fixed on the laptop screen in front of her. Mara shook her head. Nothing. It's like the whole town has just disappeared. Derek emerged from the bathroom, his damp hair plastered to his forehead. I don't think the mayor is our biggest concern right now, he said, his voice tinged with unease. Olivia looked up from her work. What do you mean? Last night, I had the most vivid dream about this place, Derek replied, his fingers trembling slightly. It felt so real, like I was back in the town's history, witnessing something unspeakable. Mara scoffed. Dreams aren't exactly reliable evidence, Derek. We're here to document facts, not chase after ghosts. Derek's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a knock at the door interrupted the tension. Mara opened it to reveal James Holloway, the local historian they had interviewed the previous day. Good morning, James said, his voice laced with a subtle condescension. I was hoping we could continue our discussion about Ravenswood's past. There's quite a bit more I'd like to share with you. Mara hesitated, glancing back at her crew. I suppose we could spare some time. Come on in. As James settled into the worn armchair, Mara noticed a faint flicker of something in his eyes, a glint of calculation that sent a chill down her spine. She pushed the feeling aside, however, and gestured for him to proceed. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, Ravenswood has a long and storied history, James began, his hands folded neatly in his lap. But what I didn't share were the darker aspects of that history. Derek leaned forward, his interest piqued. Such as? James cleared his throat. There have been numerous disappearances in this town over the years, going back decades. People simply vanishing without a trace. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. And the locals, well, they tend to keep their distance. They know better than to pry too deeply into the town's secrets. Olivia frowned. Disappearances? What kind of secrets are we talking about here? Occult practices, dark rituals, that sort of thing. James replied, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. The kind of thing that makes even the bravest of souls shudder. Mara felt a flutter of unease in the pit of her stomach, but she pushed it down, determined to maintain her rational approach. Occult practices? You mean like some sort of cult activity? James nodded solemnly. I'm afraid so. Ravenswood has a long and troubling history with such matters. There are remnants, shall we say, of those dark practices that still linger here. Derek's eyes widened. You mean like ghosts? Supernatural entities? Perhaps, James said, his lips curving into a faint smile. But I would caution you all to be careful. The town has a way of getting under your skin. Mara felt a chill run down her spine, but she forced herself to remain composed. Well, we'll certainly keep that in mind as we continue our investigation. In the meantime, is there anything else you can tell us about the town's history? Anything that might help us uncover the truth? James considered the request, his gaze shifting from one crew member to the next. I suppose there is one location you might find interesting. An old church, deep in the heart of the town. It's said to be the site of some unsavory activities in the past. Olivia straightened in her chair. A church, huh? Sounds like a good place to start. Indeed, James replied, his eyes gleaming with a hint of something darker. Just be careful what you uncover there. Some secrets are better left buried. With that, the historian rose from his seat and made his way to the door. I'll be in touch if I discover anything else of interest, he said, offering a final nod before slipping out into the gloomy daylight. Mara turned to her crew, her brow furrowed in concern. Well, that was certainly enlightening. Derek ran a hand through his damp hair, his expression troubled. I don't know, Mara. Something about this place just feels wrong. Like there's a weight to the air, a presence that's always watching. Olivia cleared her throat, ever the voice of reason. Look, I know this all sounds creepy as hell, but we're here to do a job. Let's just focus on getting the footage we need and getting out of here as soon as possible, okay? Mara nodded, her gaze drifting back to the window. Agreed. The sooner we can wrap this up, the better. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. All right, let's get to work. Derek, start prepping the equipment. Olivia, see if you can dig up any more information on that old church James mentioned. I want to know everything we can before we set foot in there. As the crews sprang into action, Mara couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in the pit of her stomach. Something was off about this town, something that seemed to seep into the very air they breathed. And she couldn't help but wonder if they were truly prepared for what they might uncover. The day passed in a blur of activity, the crew methodically working their way through a series of interviews with the few remaining residents of Ravenswood. Each person they spoke to seemed to grow more and more guarded, their eyes darting nervously as they offered up only the barest of details about the town's history. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Mara and her crew found themselves standing before the looming, decaying structure of the old church that James had mentioned. The air seemed to crackle with an unseen energy, and Mara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Olivia stepped forward, her hands gripping her audio equipment tightly. Are you sure about this, Mara? We could always come back in the morning, when there's more light. Mara hesitated, her gaze sweeping over the weathered, crumbling facade of the building. No, we need to do this now. The longer we wait, the more time the town has to. I don't know, get under our skin. Derek nodded, his expression resolute. Olivia's right, though. This place feels off. We should be careful. Mara took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. We'll be careful. But we need to keep moving forward. This could be the key to unlocking Ravenswood's secrets. Without another word, she led the way towards the church, her crew members following close behind. As they approached the heavy oak doors, Mara couldn't help but feel a sense of unease wash over her. Whatever lay beyond those doors, she knew that their investigation was about to take a dark turn. The morning sun filtered through the grimy windows of the old motel, casting a dull glow over the documentary crew as they gathered their equipment. Tension hung thick in the air, the weight of the previous day's unsettling events still lingering. Mara Chen took a deep breath, trying to quell the unease stirring within her. She had to stay focused, to keep the crew on task and find rational explanations for the strange occurrences. As the lead documentarian, she couldn't afford to let her skepticism waver, no matter how compelling the supernatural evidence became. "All right, everyone," she said, addressing the group. "Let's get back out there and finish up the filming. The sooner we can get the footage we need, the sooner we can put this town behind us." Derek Walsh, the sensitive cameraman, nodded reluctantly. "I don't know, Mara. Something's not right here. The energy in this place. It's just wrong." Olivia Stark, the level-headed sound technician, placed a hand on Derek's arm. "I know it's unsettling, but we can't let our imaginations run wild. We've got a job to do, and the sooner we get it done, the better." James Holloway, the local historian who had been guiding the crew, stepped forward. "Ravenswood has a long and complex history, one that many would prefer to keep buried. But the truth must be uncovered, no matter the cost." His eyes held a strange intensity as he spoke. Mara eyed the older man warily, her instincts telling her there was more to his words than met the eye. "Well then, let's get to it. The sooner we can shine a light on this town's past, the sooner we can move on." The crew set out, determined to resume their filming despite the lingering unease. As they navigated the crumbling streets, a chill seemed to permeate the air, and the shadows appeared to shift and dance at the edges of their vision. Midway through the morning, one of the production assistants, a young woman named Sarah, suddenly disappeared. The crew frantically searched the area, calling out her name, but she had vanished without a trace. "This can't be happening," Mara said, her composure cracking as she directed the others in the search. "She was right here a moment ago." Derek's face was etched with worry. "I knew we shouldn't have come back here. There's something dark, something evil at work in this town." Olivia tried to maintain a sense of calm, but even she couldn't hide the tremor in her voice. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We don't know what happened. Maybe she just wandered off, or—" James Holloway interrupted, his expression grave. "I'm afraid Sarah's disappearance is not an isolated incident. Ravenswood has a long history of people vanishing without a trace." Mara whirled on him, her frustration boiling over. "And you couldn't have mentioned that before we set foot in this cursed place? What else are you hiding, Holloway?" The historian held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I assure you, I'm withholding nothing. But the town's history is a complex and dangerous one. We must tread carefully if we hope to uncover the truth." As the crew continued their search, their equipment began to malfunction. Cameras would shut off unexpectedly, and static crackled through the audio feeds. Olivia's brow furrowed as she attempted to troubleshoot the issues. "Something's interfering with the signals," she muttered, her fingers flying across the soundboard. "I've never seen anything like this before." Derek's eyes darted around, his expression growing more anxious by the minute. "It's the town, Mara. It doesn't want us here. We need to get out of here, now." Mara's jaw tightened, her rational mind warring with the increasing evidence of the supernatural. "No, we can't just abandon the shoot. Not when we're so close to the truth." As the day wore on, the crew's unease intensified. The air grew colder, and strange noises seemed to echo from the abandoned buildings around them. Olivia jumped at sudden gusts of wind that seemed to have no natural source. When evening fell, the crew regrouped in their motel room, shaken by the day's events. Mara paced back and forth, her mind racing. "This doesn't make any sense," she said, running a hand through her hair in frustration. "Unexplained disappearances, malfunctioning equipment. It's like the town itself is working against us." Derek sat on the edge of his bed, his gaze downcast. "I told you, Mara. There's something dark, something evil here. We need to get out of this place before it's too late." Olivia, ever the voice of reason, interjected. But we can't just leave. Sarah is still out there, and we have a responsibility to find out what happened to her. James Holloway, who had been silent for much of the evening, finally spoke up. I'm afraid Sarah's disappearance may be linked to the town's grim history. Ravenswood has long been plagued by occult forces that have claimed many lives over the years. Mara turned to him, her eyes narrowing. Occult forces? What are you talking about, Holloway? The historian's expression darkened. There are ancient secrets buried within this town, secrets that some would kill to protect. Secrets that have been passed down through generations. Mara felt a chill run down her spine, and she knew she could no longer dismiss the supernatural elements at play. Then we need to find out what those secrets are. We need to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Derek groaned, burying his face in his hands. I don't know if I can do this, Mara. I can feel the darkness here, closing in on us. It's like it's alive, and it wants to consume us. Olivia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We're in this together, Derek. We'll figure it out, I promise. As the crew prepared to continue their investigation, a sudden, violent windstorm erupted outside, battering the windows and causing the motel to shake. Mara's eyes widened as she recognized the signs of something far beyond natural weather patterns. We need to find shelter, she said, ushering the others towards the motel's basement. This isn't just a storm, it's something else. The crew rushed downstairs, seeking refuge from the howling winds and the growing sense of dread that permeated the air. As they huddled together in the dimly lit basement, Mara knew that the real battle had only just begun. The crew descended the narrow staircase, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. Mara shone her flashlight ahead, its beam casting eerie shadows against the damp, earthen walls. Dust motes danced in the light, giving the space an unsettling, dreamlike quality. This must be the underground chamber James mentioned, Olivia said, her voice hushed. Derek trailed behind, his face etched with a mixture of trepidation and fascination. I can feel it. The energy in this place. It's ancient, and it's dark. Mara paused, turning to look at him. You really believe this is all supernatural, don't you? I know what I feel, Mara, Derek replied, his eyes narrowing. And right now, I feel like we're being watched. Olivia stepped between them, ever the peacekeeper. Let's just focus on documenting what we find, okay? The sooner we get this done, the sooner we can get out of here. The crew continued their descent, the air growing thick and oppressive. As they reached the base of the stairs, Mara swept her light across the expansive chamber. Symbols and arcane markings covered the walls, their meaning both intriguing and unsettling. Look at this, Mara said, her brow furrowed in concentration. These symbols. They seem to be linked to some kind of ritual or ceremony. Derek approached the markings, his fingers tracing the intricate patterns. This is old magic, Mara. Powerful stuff. The kind of thing that's not meant to be messed with. Olivia's gaze swept the room, taking in the details. Whatever went on down here, it doesn't seem to have been for the faint of heart. We need to document this thoroughly. The trio began setting up their equipment, their movements careful and deliberate. As Mara adjusted the camera, a sudden chill swept through the chamber, causing her to pause. Did you feel that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Olivia nodded, her eyes wide. Yeah. It's like the air just shifted. A low, rumbling sound reverberated through the room, sending tremors through the ground beneath their feet. The crew members froze, their eyes darting around in search of the source. What the hell was that? Mara demanded, her grip tightening on the camera. Derek's expression was grave. I think we just woke something up. Suddenly, the chamber was plunged into darkness as the lights flickered and died. Mara felt her heart pounding in her chest, the only sound the ragged breathing of her teammates. Olivia? Derek? She called out, her voice wavering. I'm here. Olivia responded, her voice tense. Where's Derek? Mara felt a chill run down her spine. Derek? Derek, answer me. Silence. Mara fumbled for her flashlight, its beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The chamber was empty, save for the lingering presence that seemed to press in on them from all sides. "Derek," Mara called out, her voice growing more frantic. "He's gone," a voice whispered, the words seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Mara whirled around, the beam of her light sweeping the chamber. Olivia stood, her face pale and tense. "We need to get out of here," Olivia said, her voice tinged with fear. The two women hastily gathered their equipment, their movements hurried and clumsy. As they turned to leave, a shadowy figure materialized in the doorway, blocking their path. "Going somewhere?" James Holloway asked, his voice dripping with malice. Mara felt her stomach drop. "You. What have you done with Derek?" James chuckled, the sound sending a shiver down her spine. "Oh, I haven't done anything. But the town. Well, the town has its own ways of dealing with those who pry too deeply into its secrets." Olivia stepped forward, her face set with determination. "Let us go, Holloway. This has gone far enough." The historian shook his head, his expression darkening. "I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, you've stumbled upon something much bigger than yourselves. And I can't let you leave here with that knowledge." Mara's mind raced, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. "What are you talking about? What is this place?" James' lips curled into a twisted smile. "This, my dear Mara, is the heart of Ravenswood's dark history. A place where the veil between our world and the next is at its thinnest. And I intend to use that to my advantage." The ground began to tremble once more, the air taking on a charged, electric quality. Mara and Olivia exchanged a terrified glance. "Use it? Use it for what?" Mara demanded, her voice barely hiding her rising panic. James' eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "To bring about a new order, of course. One where the power of the occult reigns supreme. And you, my dear documentarians, are going to help me achieve that goal." Mara felt a wave of nausea wash over her. "You're insane." "Perhaps," James conceded. "But I am also the master of this town's destiny. And you are merely pawns in my game." With a snap of his fingers, the chamber was plunged into darkness once more. Mara and Olivia found themselves disoriented, their senses overwhelmed by the oppressive energy that seemed to press in on them from all sides. "Derek," Mara called out, her voice desperate. "Derek, where are you?" No response. Only the eerie silence, punctuated by the faint sound of James' laughter echoing through the chamber. The two women stood back to back, their flashlights trembling in their hands. Mara's mind raced, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. But as she strained to see through the impenetrable darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer alone. Something was moving in the shadows, lurking just beyond the reach of their lights. Mara tightened her grip on the camera, her knuckles turning white. This was no longer just about a documentary, it was a fight for their very lives. As the unseen presence drew closer, Mara and Olivia steeled themselves for the confrontation to come. Whatever lay in wait for them, they knew they would have to face it, together. The tension within the film crew had reached a breaking point. As they huddled in the dank underground chamber, surrounded by the remnants of occult rituals, Mara could no longer deny the truth staring her in the face. The supernatural was real, and it threatened to consume them all. Mara turned to James Holloway, the local historian who had been their guide through this nightmare. His calm demeanor and authoritative knowledge had lulled them into a false sense of security, but now the veil had been lifted. "All right, James," Mara said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. "No more half-truths. Tell us everything you know about this place and what's happening." James regarded Mara with an unsettling smile. "My dear, I've told you everything you need to know. The town of Ravenswood has a long and troubled history, one that the outside world has conveniently forgotten. But I am the keeper of its secrets, and I intend to use that power to my advantage." Olivia stepped forward, her brow furrowed in concern. "What are you talking about? What kind of power are you referring to?" James chuckled darkly. "The power of the occult, my dear. Ravenswood was once home to a powerful secret society, one that delved into the darkest corners of the supernatural. And I am their last remaining acolyte. Derek, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly spoke up. You're the one who's been summoning that thing, aren't you? The malevolent entity that's been haunting this town. James nodded, his eyes gleaming with a sinister light. Precisely. I am the vessel through which the entity's power flows. And soon, I will channel that power to reshape the world in my own image. Mara felt the blood drain from her face. You're insane. You're going to unleash something that you can't possibly control. Oh, but I can control it, James replied, his voice dripping with confidence. I've spent decades studying the occult, mastering its rituals and incantations. I know the entity's weaknesses, its vulnerabilities, and I intend to use that knowledge to my advantage. Olivia shook her head in disbelief. So everything you've told us, everything you've done, it was all part of some twisted plan? James nodded. Of course. I needed to gain your trust, to lure you deeper into this town, so that I could harness the full power of the entity. And now, with you all here, trapped and helpless, I can begin the final ritual. Mara's mind raced as she tried to process this revelation. She had come to Ravenswood seeking the truth, but now she realized that the truth was far more terrifying than she could have imagined. And with James seemingly in control of the supernatural forces at work, their chances of survival seemed increasingly slim. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble, and the air crackled with an unnatural energy. Mara watched in horror as the shadows in the chamber seemed to come alive, shifting and swirling as if possessed by a malevolent will. It's beginning, James whispered, his eyes alight with a feverish intensity. The entity is awakening, and soon it will be unleashed upon the world. Mara glanced at Derek and Olivia, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. In that moment, she knew that they had to find a way to stop James and the entity, or risk losing everything. With a renewed sense of purpose, Mara stepped forward, her gaze locked on James. We won't let you do this, James. We'll find a way to stop you, no matter what it takes. James laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the chamber. You foolish girl. There is no stopping what is to come. The entity's power is beyond your comprehension, and soon it will be mine to command. The ground shook again, and Mara felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. The shadows seemed to be closing in, pressing in on them from all sides. Olivia let out a terrified gasp, and Derek's face was etched with a look of pure anguish. Mara knew that they were running out of time. She had to find a way to break through James's delusions, to appeal to whatever shred of humanity still lingered within him. James, listen to me. This entity, this thing you're trying to control, it's pure evil. It will destroy everything in its path, including you. You have to stop this, before it's too late. James's expression darkened, and for a moment, Mara thought she saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But then, his features hardened, and he shook his head. It's already too late, Mara. The ritual is underway, and the entity's power is growing stronger with every passing moment. Soon, it will be unleashed, and there will be nothing any of us can do to stop it. Mara opened her mouth to protest, but before she could speak, a deafening crack echoed through the chamber. The walls began to tremble, and Mara felt a wave of pure terror wash over her. She glanced around, searching for a way out, but the shadows seemed to be closing in, cutting off any possible escape. In the midst of the chaos, Mara caught a glimpse of Derek, his eyes wide with terror. He moved towards her, his hand outstretched, but before he could reach her, the ground beneath him opened up, and he vanished into the darkness. Derek! Mara screamed, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned to Olivia, her face etched with desperation. We have to get out of here, now! Olivia nodded, her expression grim, and the two women began to run, dodging the shifting shadows and the cracks that were opening up in the floor. But as they ran, Mara knew that they were running out of time. The entity's power was growing stronger, and she could feel its malevolent presence closing in on them. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber, and Mara froze in her tracks. She turned, her eyes widening in horror, as a towering, shadowy figure materialized before them. It was the entity, its form shifting and writhing, its very presence radiating pure, unadulterated evil. Mara and Olivia stood, transfixed, as the entity loomed over them, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. And in that moment, Mara knew that their only hope of survival lay in somehow confronting the darkness that had been unleashed upon them. Mara and Olivia stumbled out of the crumbling underground chamber, gasping for breath and nearly blinded by the daylight. The once abandoned streets of Ravenswood were now in a state of utter chaos. Plumes of black smoke billowed from several buildings, and the air crackled with an ominous energy that seemed to seep into their bones. "Derek!" Mara cried out, searching frantically for any sign of their missing teammate. "We have to go back for him." Olivia grabbed Mara's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "No, Mara. It's too dangerous. We have to get out of here now." The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a deafening rumble echoed through the town. Mara and Olivia watched in horror as the earth split open, revealing a gaping chasm that seemed to lead straight down into the depths of hell. "We're too late," Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. "James! He's unleashed something terrible." Mara steeled herself, her rational mind warring with the overwhelming supernatural forces that surrounded them. "We can't just leave Derek behind. There has to be a way to save him." Olivia shook her head, her expression a mix of sorrow and resignation. "Mara, you saw what happened down there. Derek. He's gone. We have to focus on getting out of this nightmare alive." Reluctantly, Mara knew Olivia was right. With a heavy heart, she followed her colleague as they navigated the increasingly treacherous streets, dodging falling debris and the twisted, contorted figures that seemed to emerge from the shadows. As they made their way towards the town's outskirts, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The town itself appeared to pulse with a malevolent energy, as if it were a living, sentient being. Broken windows shattered, and the air crackled with an otherworldly electricity that raised the hairs on the back of her neck. Olivia led the way, her eyes darting from one danger to the next. "This way, Mara. I think I see a way out." They sprinted down a narrow alley, their footsteps echoing against the crumbling walls. Mara glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see a legion of shadowy figures in pursuit. But the alley was empty, save for the eerie silence that seemed to press in all around them. As they emerged onto a wider street, Mara caught a glimpse of the town's central square. The once picturesque fountain had been reduced to a twisted, broken husk, and the surrounding buildings appeared to be warping and twisting as if alive. There, Olivia pointed to a dilapidated pickup truck parked at the edge of the square. "If we can get that vehicle started, we might have a chance." They sprinted towards the truck, Mara's heart pounding in her chest. As they neared the vehicle, a sudden movement in her peripheral vision caused her to freeze in her tracks. James Holloway stood in the center of the square, his eyes glowing with an unearthly light. In his hands he held a tattered ancient tome, its pages fluttering as if caught in an unseen wind. "So, you've managed to escape the depths of the town," James intoned, his voice eerily calm. "But your journey ends here." Mara's mind raced, trying to reconcile the helpful historian they had encountered with this twisted, sinister figure. "James, what have you done? What is this? This place?" James let out a chilling laugh. "Ravenswood is my domain, Ms. Chun. A place of power and dark magic, hidden from the prying eyes of the outside world. And now, with the veil lifted, the true nature of this town will be revealed to all." Olivia tugged at Mara's sleeve, her voice urgent. "Mara, we need to go. Now." But Mara couldn't tear her gaze away from James, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. "You're the one behind all of this, aren't you? The disappearances, the occult rituals. You've been controlling this town all along." James smiled, his expression one of twisted satisfaction. "Yes, my dear. I am the guardian of Ravenswood's darkest secrets. And now, I will unleash the full power of the entity that has been trapped here for centuries." He raised the tome, and the earth began to tremble once more. Mara and Olivia watched in horror as the ground split open, and a towering, malevolent figure emerged from the abyss. The entity was a nightmarish amalgamation of shadow and fire, its formless shape shifting and contorting as it loomed over them. Mara felt a wave of pure terror wash over her, her rational mind unable to comprehend the sheer magnitude of the supernatural force before them. "Run!" Olivia cried, grabbing Mara's arm and yanking her towards the pickup truck. They scrambled towards the vehicle, Mara's mind racing as she tried to process the unfolding events. As they reached the truck, Mara realized with a sinking feeling that the keys were nowhere to be found. "Olivia, the keys. We need them to start the truck." Olivia's face fell, her expression one of despair. No, no, no. This can't be happening." Mara whirled around, her eyes scanning the square for any sign of the keys or a way to escape. But the entity was closing in, its towering presence blocking any avenue of escape. James stood at the center of the square, the ancient tome clutched tightly in his hands. "There is no escape, Ms. Chun. This town, and all who dwell within it, are mine to command." Mara felt a spark of defiance ignite within her. "I won't let you win, James. We'll find a way out of this, no matter what." She glanced at Olivia, silently willing her colleague to find the strength to keep fighting. Together, they faced the encroaching entity, their backs pressed against the battered pickup truck. As the dark figure loomed ever closer, Mara knew that their only hope lay in confronting the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. With a deep breath, she steeled her resolve and prepared to face the ultimate reckoning. The screen fades to black as Mara and Olivia stand their ground against the malevolent entity, the fate of Ravenswood and their own survival hanging in the balance. Thank you for joining us on this spine-chilling journey through the Ravenswood curse. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and push the bell icon to stay updated on our latest content. And please share this video with your friends. Let's spread the word about the mysteries of Ravenswood.